All right. Technical session number 25. Laptop hardware. As we had talked about earlier, these technical sessions do kind of jump around a little bit so that we can match up the material as best we can with the other programs we have going on. But today we're going to be getting into the laptop hardware and how it varies a little bit from the desktop. You don't have quite as much real estate, so some accommodations need to be made, and how we go about addressing that. So, oops, too far. Here we go. Our objective for this particular technical session is to be able to describe how a laptop functions similarly and differently than a desktop. Describe the functions and components within the display of a laptop, and understand installing and configuring laptop hardware components. BSMs for this particular technical session that we want to focus on are communication. As we often state, IT is a team sport, so we want to be able to communicate with our team members, especially if we want to share the knowledge we have, because some people may be better at networking, some people may be better at hardware, some people may be better at Windows-based software, some may be better at Linux or telecoms, stuff like that. On your team, you're going to have various different skills. You're going to need to communicate with these people and be sure to learn from their experience as well as share yours with them. And if you ever are in a situation where you need to hand off a problem, you need to be able to communicate that effectively to them so they know what steps you've already taken, so they don't waste time. They know what the customer, their expectations are. And if they need to be reaching back out to the customer to give updates, they need to have all that information in place. As always, we want to maintain a growth mindset and understand that in this field, it is continual learning. There is no stopping. We are on that journey right now. We are stepping into a field that is constantly changing and evolving, and we need to be aware of it, embrace that, and what is it we always say? If you want to be successful in IT, be interested in IT. Because we always make time for what we're interested in. All right. Basic types of laptops you'll come across. You have your standard laptop, which is a small portable computer. You've seen it, kind of opens up like a clamshell, and it has a lot of desktop functionality, components, and hardware, although in a smaller package. Then you get into notebooks, which are smaller than a laptop. They have integrated DVD and CD-ROMs, not so much now, but at the time of this, they did utilize DVD and CD-ROMs quite a lot, although that is kind of becoming a legacy technology, especially in the laptop and notebook fields. They do not have extensive cooling capacity, partially because of the real estate you have to work with. So as we had stated in our introduction to computers, you never put laptops on like blankets, on your lap, on other things, because then it cannot vent properly and you can quickly overheat or damage a laptop by doing that. We get down to notebooks. They're quite small in size. They're basically stripped down versions of computers, mostly utilized for, web surfing, things of that nature. They have very, very low power consumption. They don't have a lot of storage on them. They are more for a casual user. You get into Chromebooks. They look very similar to laptops, but they operate off of the Linux-based Chrome OS, which is a very stripped down operating system. It is super fast for internet functionality and streaming and things like that, but it can also run your Android mobile apps on top of it as well. And then we get down into the tablet PC hybrid, which you're starting to see a lot more people adopt, because you can just basically take a tablet, attach a keyboard to it, and get a good portion of the functionality that you can out of a laptop. And if you're going to need to do heavy lifting things like, games, any kind of rendering or something like that, then you would move up to a more robust system. But for the vast majority of things you want to do, even word processing, spreadsheets, presentations, all that fun stuff can be done on a tablet PC hybrid. Questions so far? All right. Advantages and disadvantages of laptops versus desktops. Obviously, one big one is portability. You can take a laptop with you wherever you go. You throw it into your bag, transport it wherever you need to be, and you have all of your equipment right there with you. Not so easy to do with a desktop, unfortunately. The disadvantage that comes along with that is it costs more. You're going to be spending more money with less functionality when you go from a desktop to a laptop overall. Wireless options. You do have Wi-Fi access, airplane mode, Bluetooth, GPS. A lot of that is starting to be built into PCs and integrated into the motherboards and the wireless cards and stuff like that. It is not a guarantee. You may still need to, add on a Bluetooth adapter or a Wi-Fi antenna or something along those lines to your PCs in order to gain that functionality. But more and more, that is becoming a standard within the desktop community. Now, laptops aren't quite as powerful as desktops, so you lose some performance and functionality there. If you're, big into gaming, it's, really hard to hit some of the top end games on a laptop, historically speaking. Now, I know there are some super powerful laptops that can probably do pretty good on it, but you're still not going to reach that performance level you would on a desktop. Other advantages, they have integrated devices already in them, like the touchpad, trackball, pointer stick. Touch screen is becoming a lot more common in laptops. You don't really see that much, except in rare circumstances on desktops themselves. And even in that case, it tends to be an all-in-one device. Webcam and microphone standard built in. Usually on desktops, you have to buy your webcam, but you might be able to use the onboard mic, but it tends to be really shoddy. So people tend to upgrade their microphone if they are utilizing a desktop. But again, if you have an all-in-one, some of this may already be integrated as well. Special function keys, because they don't want to utilize the full keyboard. But some people still like the 10 key number keys and stuff along that nature. So laptops have had add these special function keys along with that. Limitations, battery limits. Compared to being always plugged in. You may only have about an hour or two, depending on the programs you are running, of functionality before you run out of battery life for the most part. Expandability. CPU that you get installed in your laptop, for the most part, you're stuck with. It's soldered onto the motherboard. So that's, that you get what you get. With that particular one, upgrading the CPU is not really a viable option. Yes, there are extenuating services where you can probably do that, but the cost of doing it may be more than just buying a new laptop. Sound cards, video cards, not so much, although they do have an external video card for laptops that you can utilize. I don't know of anybody who actually has used it, so I can't tell you how robust it is. But they do actually have external video cards you can use for laptops to upgrade their video. They're easy to steal, so you have to be able to lock them down in some sense if you are keeping them in an office or something like that, because they are so portable. They're easy for somebody to walk off with. The bad thing is they are a drop hazard, and also if they're not carried properly, you can damage internal components. The big thing you see people do a lot when they're walking from room to room, they're carrying their laptop like this with one hand. That's bad because it actually flexes the laptop and can damage it. You actually should carry it with two hands so it has a stable platform in between rooms. But oftentimes, you get your cup of coffee in one hand, your laptop in the other, and you're just kind of cruising from room to room. No, you shouldn't do that. You shouldn't set it on your lap so that it can, fry because it can't breathe, carrying it properly. And it also diminishes your risk of actually dropping it and damaging the components as well. Now, they tend to have pretty good quality construction because they're meant to be portable. They're meant to be moved a lot. Towers aren't necessarily built to be moved repeatedly. It's kind of like they're designed to be built, put in place, and that's where you keep them. So that is taken into mind with laptops. They are taking into account this is going to be moving a lot. So it is a little bit more robust with regards to shock, absorption and stuff like that versus a desktop. But as we had stated earlier, also, it's smaller, it's easier to steal. So, questions so far? All right. Hardware components within your laptop. Much of them are very similar to what you would see in a desktop with some modifications. Motherboards. Almost every motherboard in a laptop is proprietary to that design of a laptop. It is literally cut out to fit specifically in that case with the battery modifications, everything else they got in place. Sometimes they don't even have enough room for a full motherboard, so they end up instituting what's called a daughter board. So you literally have a motherboard and then a secondary board that's there to help support it, which is called a daughter board. So those two together would make a standard motherboard that you would see in a larger computer. But in laptops, because they don't have enough space, they had to break it up into two separate components. CPU, as we had talked about previously, it is soldered onto the motherboard. So just swapping out your CPU, not really a viable option. As this is being moved around, you can see why that is a good idea, because if you could flip your laptop over and then the CPU come loose a bit, that could cause damage to the pins and you would rapidly lose functionality out of it. So in the case of laptops, they go ahead and they just solder it right on. As they're trying to get the most battery life for you, to extend mobility, they operate off of lower voltages. And unfortunately, as a direct result of that, they operate at lower clock speeds than normal desktops. So that's where you're losing some of your performance. Heat sinks within laptops, they can't have those really tall 2-3 inch heat sink towers like they do in a desktop. They have to be much smaller in size. So that's where the ventilation becomes yet even more critical. And you will actually have like 3-4 fans operating in a laptop, where on a standard desktop, you may only have two, one incoming, one outgoing, and then maybe the one on the CPU. All right, memory, the RAM. We talked about this briefly in our RAM technical session that we talked about. You can't use full-size memory sticks inside a laptop. So they use SODIMMs and microDIMMs in the laptops because they share a lot of space. And in fact, you would actually insert these and then they lay down. So it's not like the desktops where you lock them down in place and then they stay right where they are. These you actually lock in and then they lay down. And this would be one of the main things on a laptop you would upgrade in order to get greater performance out of it. You would upgrade the RAM as to what was capable of the CPU and the motherboard of handling. All right, hard drives. As we talked about in our drive session yesterday, hard drives in laptops tend to be smaller. They tend to be the 2.5 or 1.8 inch drives. They're usually solid state, just because mechanical hard drives don't have a lot of really good shock absorption. And if that drive is running and you bump something, those heads can come in contact with the platters and destroy data at that point. So to try to avoid this, for the most part, they utilize solid state drives. And that also lends itself to part of why the laptops cost much more than desktops, because desktops can still utilize these mechanical drives in a cost saving sense. All right, optical drives. If they are present, they tend to be a little bit smaller. Maximum you would have is one, though overwhelmingly at this point, no optical drives on laptops at all for the most part. There are still some out there, but this is being worked out of the system, even in desktops. It's becoming rare.
I was going to ask, Kelly, does anybody in the class have a laptop with the CD optical drive on it? You got one, Mark?
I do.
Okay.
Okay, is that
I
the
have
one
a
you currently
drive.
using, TK?
Uh-huh.
Okay,
Yeah,
Yeah.
I I specifically requested it just in case I wanted to burn CDs into my iTunes. So
okay,
Okay.
that's the only
Okay.
reason I really asked for him to put it on there.
okay.
When I did my big session of ripping down all my movies, Mark, I ended up buying an extra external DVD-ROM just because I knew by the end of it, I was going to burn up the motor in that thing. It lasted about 5 months after I did my ripping down all my music and movies, and then it just couldn't do anymore. So I didn't even use my internal one for that.
That was smart, Kelly. That was super smart.
Yeah. So, like we're saying, though, optical drives kind of being weeded out. They're not typically using those, especially considering the fact that operating systems are now starting to get to the point where they're exceeding the size of these drives or of the optical discs. So it's, unless we want to go back to the days of the old 5.5-inch floppies where it's, insert disk 3 and you're flipping out your floppies and stuff like that whenever you're doing something. Those of you who were around at that time, if you ever tried to play a game, you spent half your time literally flipping out floppy drives just to be able to play the game. So different times, absolutely. But that is kind of going by the wayside for the most part.
You have a question, Diaz?
I do. When you talked about the daughter board, is that going to be on the test?
They may ask you in reference to what a daughter board is. And so it may be definitional. So, it is a secondary board inside of a laptop. I had heard of somebody get a question for it, but you just associate a motherboard, daughter board. The daughter board is there to support the motherboard. Does that answer it?
Yes, it does.
Okay. All right. Specialized hardware that you will utilize with laptops, kind of giving you a basic overview of them. We have docking stations. Also, we have port forwarders. We have express cards, batteries, power adapters, cable locks, and biometric authentication. All things that we can utilize with to increase our experience with these. Now, starting in on docking stations right here, this one up here is more of a docking station, the one on the upper right. Down here, this is a little bit more of a port forwarder. The docking station is something that you would physically put your laptop on and lock it down in place. This also can be used as a security measure. They do have older docking stations that would allow you to lock your laptop down to the docking station, and the docking station itself could be secured to the desktop. So older security methods, they would utilize something like that, and you actually would need a physical key to remove the laptop from the docking station at that point. Port forwarders tend to attach via, like currently the most common way is through a USB-C. And then what that will do is extend the amount of functionality you have with your laptop. It'll give you extra USB ports. It'll give you display ports. It'll give you another network attachment, monitors, all that fun stuff can already be established. And then all you do when you come to the office is come in and then you plug in that USB-C and you're up and running. So it makes life a lot easier. Docking station kind of operates the same way. If you do a lot of work from home and you do work at the office, you can have essentially docking stations at either place, and it operates almost like a desktop at that point. You come in, you lock it down, and then you have your standard full-size keyboard, mouse, monitors, all that stuff, and you can operate on it as if it's a regular desktop, but you're carrying it between both locations. I used this a lot with my previous job. Docking stations at first, and then we moved up to port forwarders, which were a lot more convenient because they didn't take up so much space on your desks. Questions so far with regards to that? So docking
Port
station
forwarder and port replicator is to be used synonymous. So I want them to know that because
or port replicator, excuse me.
Yeah.
So port replicator, my apologies. Yeah. Docking station, you think of it as physically docking to it. Port replicator, separate from it, connected by something like a USB style firewire or like a USB-C. Yes, Renzi.
So that's just to add like places for you to connect things, or
It could be, yes, it does add things, but also it's so you can have everything already set up. So like if you come into work, you don't have to hook up a monitor, you don't have to hook up your mouse and your keyboard and all that stuff. You don't have to do all that stuff again. It's already established in this port replicator, and then you just dock the port replicator like with the cable into your computer, and all that stuff is already set up for you. You don't have to do it every single time you come to the office. The same with the docking station. You know, like your office is already set up. You could have it where your phone is routed through your computer and all that kind of stuff. And rather than having to hook up all those wires, I mean, it may only be like 5-6 wires, but still having to hook up those 5-6 wires every single day can get a little annoying. So they just have it where you come in, you lock it down, turn it on, and everything's great. You're already set up. So in a sense, we can get a laptop kind of acting like a desktop. Questions so far? All right. Other specialized hardware you can get are express cards. Don't see these in use much anymore, but they were heavily used probably 10 years ago, I would say. But they are very much on their way out. This would, you have the two sizes here. They both have the same connection width, but some computers only had the 34, some allowed for the 54. And if you've ever seen these ports on the side of your laptop, that is what they were to be used for. They were to add additional functionality, like network cards for, you know, wired to wireless networks, USB controllers, flash memory adapters, all kinds of stuff like that, TV tuners, smaller hard disks, things like that. But again, a lot of this is kind of going by the wayside. You don't see these around much anymore because a lot of this stuff is already integrated into the motherboard itself. All right. Batteries. Unlike desktops, laptops require batteries for for power sources when they are not hooked up to their outlets. So I give you a little bit more mobility and functionality. Most common ones you will get are the nickel cadmium, excuse me, or NiCads. And then you have the nickel metal hybrid or hydride, I believe it is actually nickel metal hydride, and lithium ion. Currently today, we only use the lithium ions because of the highest energy levels on them, and they tend to have fewer problems with regards. NiCads had a tendency to wear out pretty easily. Lithium ions were a good replacement, and I think the nickel metal hybrid had hazardous material issues with it. So any questions with that? All right. Specialized power adapters. They don't use the standard IEC cable when you are hooking up to a laptop. They use power adapters like this, much like the power supply within your actual desktop that converts your AC to DC. In laptops, this is done in the plug. That's what that little brick is halfway through your plug. That converts the power to the DC voltages that your PC needs at that point. And you need to be very careful of just grabbing one and using it on whatever you need. These things supply different voltages. So if you're not paying attention to it, just because the adapter on the end fits does not mean that that plug is sufficient for your computer. You could have too little juice and it won't function properly, or you can damage components, or it could have too much juice and you could literally burn out your computer or whatever you're hooking up to it. So on the back of the little blocks, it will tell you the amperage and the voltage that it's supplying, and you need to make sure that that is compatible with whatever you're using it for. This doesn't just go for laptops. It's any electronic device that utilizes plugs like this. Even phone charger plugs or things like that. You want to verify that the voltages it's getting are appropriate. Otherwise, you could damage expensive electronics that way. Just because it fit doesn't mean it works. What do you mean when you're replacing your plugs, Janina? Is that what you're talking about? Yes. Okay, so if you're replacing your plug, yes, you want to make sure you're getting a plug that is compatible with the electronic you're trying to get that plug for. So if you're buying a plug for a Dell laptop, you want to make sure that the voltages match up. It doesn't necessarily have to be a Dell specific one, but you need to make sure that your voltages and amperages are matching. If your computer only needs 1.5 amps, you need to make sure you're not getting a plug that's providing it with 3, because you can damage your components that way. So a lot of times when you're buying them, they will show you a picture at the back that lines up your voltages.
Also, when you buy, they have this universal one that has all these different adapters that you'll be able to find the appropriate adapter to your device. What Kelly's saying and what you should also look for is that they have the actual voltages available, although they're allowing you to get that adapter. And typically they do a good job of that, because there's a range in which that adapter will work, that power adapter will work. So unless you buy one that's directly for your device, you'll end up going somewhere and getting a universal one, and it have a whole bunch of connectors on it. Make sure it does say it's for your device, but then also make sure that it serves that power requirement for your device as well. And it should. They do a good job of that, because they try to cover a lot of bases. And for the iPhone chargers in the gas station, they're poorly made. So you can't really confirm that it's going to maintain that voltage. But you're right, Jordan. That's the reason why they have issues with working.
Yep. Any questions so far? Continuing on. There we go. Other specialized hardware for security measures. You have cable locks. They will have ports on the side of the laptops themselves where you can insert these cable locks and secure them down to your desks or, the cabinets or what have you. Is this a perfect system? No. If somebody really wants that laptop, are they going to get it? Yes. This is going to stop the, opportunist thief for the most part. But somebody sitting there and ripping a laptop off of a desk is going to draw some attention. So in and of itself, that provides some security. So cable lock systems. They do use locks on desktops too, but a lot of that's to keep people out of the case, but some will actually lock the desktop itself and cable lock it to the base of the desks as well. So, all right. Other specialized hardware. Biometric authentication. Laptops were one of the first to kind of integrate this into its system, which would allow you as a multi-factor authentication where you could sign in with your name and password and then go ahead and use the biometric, be it the thumbprint reader right here, or you can use your webcams for facial recognition. These things helped aid in security for your devices. We'll get into these a little bit more when we get into security. All right, physical ports on the side of a laptop. Many of these should be pretty familiar to you. You got your DC jack over here. headsets. You have old USB 2, then they would have USB 3s right here. Get an HDMI port. VGAs, although that is very rare to see that nowadays. Almost never see a VGA in the back or on the, I've never seen it on the side personally. I always see it in the back, but VGAs are very, very rare these days. Your network port or Ethernet port, SD cards. Again, you would see these sometimes, not very often though. And a Magic Gate slot. Although I'm not overly familiar with that particular one myself. And then on the other side, you have your cable lock port, which is this little horizontal slash. You have your optical drive, and then your speaker and microphone. Questions so far?
That's a Sony laptop, it looks like. So that Magic Gate has to be something Sony related.
I think it's proprietary.
Yeah, it's probably, yeah.
And this, a lot of this will vary pretty greatly depending on the laptops you have. Some may have FireWire, some may have DisplayPort, some may have Thunderbolt. A lot of it depends on the manufacturer and model you have, but these are just some of the common ones you will see. All right. Here we go. So you got your headphone, your USB 3s right here, your Thunderbolt, FireWire, Ethernet, and then MagSafe, which is the power port for it. On the other side, you have your cable lock and then your optical drive. Questions so far?
Renzi, you got your hand up? Okay.
I don't know if you said this or not, but did you explain what the Kensington lock is for?
The what?
Yeah.
Oh, that is the
The
cable
cable.
lock.
The cable lock.
That's like the same as what you showed earlier with that.
This right here.
Yep.
Okay.
Kensington is the brand.
Okay. So is this okay? Thanks.
They do have different types. So yeah, Kensington lock, SDXC card. That's like your memory cards you would use for cameras, stuff like that. Any other questions? All right. Now, display features and functionality. Once we got finally away from the CRT TVs and allowed for flat screen TVs, this allowed the rise of the laptop. Without one, the other would not exist. In early iterations of a laptop, if you had a damaged screen, you just bought a new laptop, period. Because the cost of the screen by itself was going to be more than the laptop cost with the screen. So it is integrated into the device, and it is basically one of the largest items that contribute to cost with regards to the laptop. Inside the display itself, obviously you have your screen, like we were talking about with the LCDs, where you have the CCFL backlights. You have the inverter to change it. What does the inverter do? Let's go with
DC to AC.
DC to AC. Inverter converts DC back to AC. You have a digitizer, Wi-Fi antenna, a webcam, and a microphone, all built into the display piece. They would put the antenna, you would have the Wi-Fi integrated into the circuit board, and then they would run an antenna up through the actual screen itself, and this allows for greater reception. So typically you would see 10 to 17-inch screens, although they do have much larger form factor laptops. You can get up to like 20, 22-inch, things like that. Much beyond that, they become a little unwieldy. Luis, you have a gaming laptop. What size is your screen?
It is probably a 15.6.
15.6. Okay, there we go. So it does fall within that range. Almost all laptops maintain a 16:9 or 16:10 aspect ratio. And then LCD was very common for quite some time, though overwhelmingly they've changed over to LED and OLEDs. That tends to be the two types you see right now. It actually is much more rare to see an LCD rather than LED or OLED. Yes, Janina.
I'm curious. You know how we were talking about the desktops and them having pixels that are either damaged or whatever in a laptop. If that happens, then it's just damaged, right?
It is. So then it becomes a factor of is it okay and you can just deal with it, or is it so much so that it's, you know, you're not able to function properly and you need to replace it? I mean, I personally see people walking around with cracked screens like crazy on their phones, and they're like, "Yep, I can still function." You know, like it's distorting the picture quite a bit, but you know what? I can still get by. It's not worth replacing it just yet. You know, and then, you know, so it really depends on the individual user itself and the warranties you're working with, whether or not it's worth just replacing it or just dealing with it.
Okay, thanks.
Especially if you're talking about like a cluster of maybe like 15 pixels across the whole unit is damaged. At that point, it's not worth replacing. And I think warranty wise, they won't even consider it until you get to a point where it's like 25% of the pixels in a certain in any given region are out. So you could have like 10% across the entire monitor out and they won't replace it because it's not bad enough yet. So they do have
Gotcha.
very, you know, specific requirements with regards to dead pixels before they will actually replace a unit. Let's see here, harken back to yesterday. Who's got their camera off? All right. Chris K, can you tell me which, under the CCFL there, which of those two right here which of these two are preferred by gamers?
IPS.
IPS, do we agree with that? Bonus round, Chris, what does IPS stand for?
I don't know. I'm sorry, I don't know.
Chris, he said gamers. So look
Gamers.
at the two. Look at the two descriptions and answer that question.
Okay, TN,
Ah, why would you
Right.
say that, sir?
because it's a faster response. and
That's
lower
my
power.
There we
guy.
go.
That's-
There we go.
Hey,
All right. What
pick
does
up on
TN?
those clues.
What does TN stand for? We're gonna give you a chance, man. What does TN stand for?
Twisted something.
There we go. We're halfway there.
What's the network?
No, not quite.
know.
Not quite.
I don't know.
Kaylin, do you want to help out?
Twisted.
I don't know what TN stand for neither.
What about IPS?
IPS.
Internal picture.
I appreciate the gifts. But
In plane switching.
In plane switching. Very good. Very good. Now we just need to know what that N stands for.
Pneumatic.
Alan, you had your camera on. You can't answer.
Can I answer now?
Yes, twisted pneumatic, TN, twisted pneumatic. IPS is in plane switching. The downfall of the twisted pneumatic is a lower viewing angle. So if you get off center just slightly, half the screen can start black out. You won't be able to see it very good. In plane switching offers a very wide viewing angle, but it does not offer really great response time. So you get a lot of blurring and stuff like that. So that is not something gamers would really go for. All right.
Wait, so gamers, they would prefer the 10?
Yes,
Yes,
they
ma'am.
prefer twisted pneumatic. I'm trying to remember where I read the story where they were talking about they were setting up a Madden tournament. And it was for like the regional
For a championship.
championships,
Yeah.
regional championships for Madden. They were holding it at a bar down by the river, something like that. And they just grabbed as many flat panel TVs as they could. And they set up all these TVs all over and hooked up gaming stations to them and then set up a bracketing system. And then they started realizing that there were lines for certain ones and nobody was playing on the others. And they couldn't figure out what was going on, but the gamers figured it out real quick, which were the twisted pneumatic monitors and which were not. They wanted to have the best advantage possible. So you would see them, they're like, I would rather wait 45 minutes to get my shot at a TN monitor than just jump in and be at a major disadvantage on a IPS monitor. And the people who were hosting it had no clue. They couldn't figure out what was going on. And then they finally just started asking around and realized that some of the monitors they had weren't up to snuff for competitive gaming. All right, so as we talked about, like with LCD, you need the CCFL backlights. So if you're going to have that requires an inverter to be able to provide the proper amount of voltage in the proper manner so that the CCFL can backlight that LCD for you. Not as commonly seen nowadays as we're moving away from LCDs, more into LEDs and OLEDs at this point. And then you have a digitizer on Mini, which allows you to write or draw on something that's much similar to your touchpad and convert from an analog to a digital input. Sometimes it can be built into the display itself, especially in the convertible, like the tablet laptop converters. I think Toshiba had one of the first ones of that where the screen would actually spin and then lock down, and then customers could actually sign for packages and stuff on the actual screen. It had a digitizer built in, though that is not extremely common, but it is there. And there's two different types of touchscreen we will talk about. One is resistive touch versus capacitive touch, and a digitizer is a resistive touch mechanism where it relies heavily on pressure. All right, Wi-Fi antenna. The wire goes up and around the monitor itself to allow for better reception. If you ever come to a situation where you have to replace the Wi-Fi antenna, if the cable gets damaged or something like that, you have to disassemble the display itself and test question, what is the thing you run the risk of damaging the most when you are disassembling a laptop display? It is the plastic bezel that goes around the laptop that kind of covers everything up to make it look nice and neat. It is a very, very fragile piece of plastic, very easy to break. So when you are working on the display of a laptop, that is the most common thing that gets broken, is that bezel that goes all the way around the laptop itself. And that is the outer covering, typically on the front of a laptop.
So Kelly, you see this word clamshell case?
Mm-hmm.
I need you to explain that so everybody knows what a clamshell case is referring to.
Well, so it closes, comes shut. It opens up kind of like a clam mouth, and you have your monitor up here, your keyboard down here, and then it closes up like a clam.
Okay. Thank you, Kelly. Because I see that, and I want to make sure that everybody knows what clamshell is.
That is true. All right. Webcams and microphone are pretty standard in laptops today. They kind of come with the units themselves. You don't usually have to buy additional stuff unless you're wanting to upgrade to a better quality. Like I had to upgrade the microphone on my all-in-one here because the mic I had, it was pretty good, but I wanted something that was a little bit clearer for this particular job. But you do have on most laptops already built in your cam and your microphone that are pretty sufficient for most day-to-day operations. Desktops, quite often you have to buy them unless you're buying an all-in-one unit, then it may come in the already packaged in. All right, care and maintenance. Don't ever spray your laptop with glass cleaner. You can damage the coating on the monitors themselves. You shouldn't do it to your TV either. They actually have very specialized electronics cleaning. If you need to do a deep clean on it, they have like electronics wipes or something like that that, you know, won't damage the filament that is coating your monitors. But more often than not, you should be able to just do it with a soft, dry cloth. On your keyboards, trackball, all that fun stuff, compressed air will get you about 99% of the way there to get you all your debris and little food bits and all that stuff that get down into your keyboards. Although if you're a person who is regularly eating while you're working on your laptop, they do make silicone covers that go over your keyboard that prevents that stuff from getting in there. All you got to do is pull that off, shake it out, and you can scrub that and you're fine and put one of those back on there. Just a little life hack. All right, keyboard keys are sticking. You should be able to remove them and then, you know, clean out underneath those keys themselves. You should typically never open the display panel, although there are rare cases where you can do that. Replacing the Wi-Fi antenna was one of them. And again, like we said, the biggest threat would be your bezel getting damaged. Yes, Janina.
Okay, you know how well, nowadays the laptops are being said that the keyboard is waterproof. How true is that?
Wait a minute, what?
Like not like waterproof, like spill resistant, should I say?
Okay, yeah, those are two very different words. Two very different terms. You know, that's why like most watches, they will say the watch is water resistant, which means if stuff splashes on it, or you know, if you know, something pours over it, something like that, you're okay. Then there's waterproof where you could like fully submerge it and be okay. So they may be spill resistant, which means they may have like, you know, around the keyboard, rather than like having open gaps, it's very, almost no gap in between the keys, and you know, allows for easier cleaning. So this would be spill resistant. But there still are cases where water can get down underneath the keys themselves. So you want to try to be as careful about that as you can, regardless. And
waterproof almost make it seem like Kelly could put that whole keyboard in the
underwater
tub
and
he'll be cool.
on it. Yeah,
I get that because I had a phone once where the person the company I got it from kept saying that the phone was waterproof, but I got water on it and it just damaged it. So that's what I'm saying, like trying to figure that out. Like,
well, the thing is it also comes into is like waterproof under right conditions. So like they may have a plug or something that goes like in the headphone jack, or something that covers the speakers or something like that. There may be other things that have to be in place for it to be considered waterproof. And then it's also how much is it waterproof? Like I remember when I was working on boats down in the Virgin Islands, I bought a camera that I thought they said they marketed it as waterproof. And me and my buddy were free diving and going down and taking pictures of the reef and stuff like that. But we didn't read what it was rated for. It was only rated for 12 feet, and we were taking it down to about 50. And we get down to 50 and you just heard this pop. And
Pressure.
Yeah, it popped, and then water flooded into the camera and we lost all our pictures. So yeah, you know, but it was just one of those things like, you know, then we get back up and we look and we're like, oh yeah, we probably should have read the directions. It said waterproof. I should be able to take this sucker down to 300 feet. No, so, you know, it all depends on circumstance, and that's why it's always a misnomer. Many times now they'll say water resistant rather than waterproof.
thank you.
So no problem. Good question. That's messed up, Mark. This wasn't scuba diving. This is just snorkeling.
I took a class in college for scuba diving.
Mhm.
Went to the class. We put on our gear. We went through everything, put our gear on. I got in the pool, sank to the bottom, left all that crap there and quit the class.
It's like a cup of tea.
Can't breathe, man. It feels funny. I didn't like
It I will give you that. I will give you that. I haven't done much scuba diving. I did a little bit. All right. So back to our displays. Cleaning it, soft, dry cloth will get you 90% of the time, unless you got stuff getting thrown on your monitors or any kind of stuff like that. Then I don't know, maybe reassess what's going on. But most of the time it's just dust. You can clean it off, you're good to go. Compressed air for the keyboard, remove the keys, things like that. I think we just talked about it. All right. Troubleshooting. If you have a black ring around the picture that you were looking at, you should probably try setting it up, running it at higher resolution. That may alleviate those particular problems. Dead pixels, same as our display devices that we talked about earlier. Either deal with it or return it if it's still under warranty. Fuzzy text. Either replace your glasses or run it in higher resolution, whichever the main cause will be. Another thing is you can enable clear type, and that is underneath your display properties. If it randomly shuts off, one, it may not have good ventilation. Like if you're running this sucker sitting on your lap, it may be overheating, and that may be why it's randomly shutting off. Other thing would be to check your refresh rate as well, and then open up your msconfig and stop any additional services that may be running in the background of the system. We don't all want to be like Marvin and have 75 windows open on our page at any given time. I don't even know how he reads what they are to know where to go. But
you got to click on each
method,
one. You got to click on each one to see what they were. Like, oh yeah, I remember. I need to keep that. I need to keep that.
Organizational method works for Marvin. Me, I'm a little too flighty. My ADD will kick in about 6 tabs in if I'm clicking through it and be like, oh, that's what I was looking at, and I'm way off topic by the time we're done. It just doesn't work for me. All right. Black screen on startup, possibly an issue with your video card. You can start it in safe mode to see if it's the drivers. You can also try hooking it up to an external monitor to see if that works as well. Because sometimes if you're going to a presentation and you switch the display to another monitor and you have not switched it back, the computer itself is looking for an external monitor, so it will be black itself. And unless you toggle it back to the primary screen, it will still try to project to an outside monitor. So hooking it up to an external monitor is another way you can try to troubleshoot that. Questions so far? And I believe they have labs with regards to this in test out. All right. Configuring hardware and components. Now, nice inside the hard drives of most laptops, they have built in a recovery partition that can restore all the factory settings on your laptop. So can anybody tell me exactly what a partition is? You want to take a guess at it?
Nope. Pozo, no Mark. I'm trying to see who else.
A partition is a
No,
logic.
no.
Oh, muted you. You're on mute, Pozo. Nope. Let me see. I'm gonna pick somebody, man. Evan, go for it. Tell me what a partition is, man.
A recovery partition, like restore partition.
See that's good.
Like a recovery, like reset.
think about what you just said. You just said recovery partition, because that's when you think about partitions, if you got in the computer, you're going to see that recovery partition. But what is it? So what is a partition though? Let's get out of computers. When you think about a partition, what does it do? I think Beyonce got a song.
It
Close the
divides.
partition, please. There we go. What are we doing?
Separates.
We're separating something. We're isolating something. So when it comes to hard drives, you got 200 gigs, 1 terabyte hard drive.
So we're separating like the
There you go.
space.
We're identifying a block of space that we want to put away from the rest.
So kind of like an organization type thing.
It is. You're breaking down a big chunk into pieces where you know where they are. So that's exactly what it is. And that's what Kelly was trying to get to. But the reason we brought it up is because Kelly, do you want to share that story? What time is it? Oh.
Now, diagnostic software can help you to configure systems issues if you're having them. They have built-in utility programs, although you're still seeing this on desktops as well. They'll have the frequently asked questions, different places you can go and kind of troubleshoot if you want, rather than reaching out to IT, depending on your needs. Hopefully after this class, you will be the IT that they reach out to versus having to reach out to IT yourself. That is our overall goal. And then they do stamp the model and serial number on the bottom of it for identification. Always a good idea to have that copied down somewhere else in case your laptop is stolen. It allows for easy identification, and also it can send essentially like a ping of death to that device if it ever gets fired up after it is stolen, and essentially brick the device. So those are good things to kind of keep stored in a separate place if you have a laptop as well. Also on your phone. All right. Uh-oh. I think I'm having trouble loading again.
The two things that most manufacturers will allow you to remove and take care of. I'm gonna turn the thing off. Let's see if I can get my background off really quickly. Choose background filter, none. So on the back of this older laptop, I can take my battery out, but then you have like certain screws that you could identify here that actually it says memory. It has a little thing that says, got a little picture to let me know that memory's there. This other one got a picture to let me know that the hard drive is here. So in a lot of laptops, you can do what you need to do to address removing the doors instead of going through the whole process of what that gentleman did, disassembling the whole laptop. Newer laptops, like I have a Surface and it's fully enclosed. I can't get to the battery. I can't get to the memory. It told me that it's all like maxed out, so I can't upgrade anything, which now that's not true. You know what I'm saying? That's, if you can get in there, you can upgrade things. That's not totally true. They're just going to make it a little harder for you to get in there. Kelly expressed that to me, like, hey man, you can get in there now. I was like, yeah, I wonder if I wanted to like upgrade this. You like, come on, Marvin, we can get in there. But they make it so they don't want you to purchase a new one before you try to upgrade anything. Needless to say, it's working just fine. And that's fine right now, but I was just thinking down the line.
Yeah.
But go for it, Kelly.
No, I was agreeing with you.
Okay. But with this upgraded memory, like I said, I can just take that one screw out, open that flap, and I see the memory in there. Unlike on a desktop where you're pushing it down and making it lock in place, with laptops, it comes in from the side. Because you think about it, you want a very small form factor. If you had your RAM sticking out up like vertically, then that's how big and how thick that laptop has to be, because it has to have space to sit that way. But if you bring it in from a horizontal plane, so you just slide it in, let the gold pin stick in, push it in, and then you pop it down into place. They said, of course, use your ESD options that you have, gloves or wristband. And once you get in there, it pops. It pops up at, you pull the little levers out to the side and it will like pop up at an angle. You just pull it out. And you replace it with the newer ones that you have. And then of course, plop it back, close it back up, go to the, once you boot it up, it may acknowledge a increase in RAM, but if not, you can always go to the properties and see that increase in RAM. It better increase, or it might not turn on. That'll be the other thing that happens when you know something's not right. You might get some type of beep or something. All right, replacing the hard drive. Same with what I said. You should be able to identify an area on the back that's representing the hard drive. Once you do that, you take the appropriate screws out. With hard drives, same deal. It's a way that you can slide it, and it's sitting inside of it typically will sit inside of an adapter or some type of case to hold it in place. And you just push it back a little bit and that frees it up and you can bring it right out. Then you may have screws to unscrew away from that little carrier to pop the new one in. And once you pop the new one in, you put it in, you slide it into place and it connects and we're good to go. Some may have some type of ribbon, but most, it may just slide right in. Any questions about that? I don't see any questions. So that's hard drive. Once you get it off, it's pretty much like documenting where your screws go, making sure you put them in a place where you can put them right back in. But it's super, it tend to be easier than we think. So you just got to be comfortable and confident in doing it and making sure that you're following the safety procedures to do so. Replacing, removing components and hardware. Internal versus external. You want to recognize the internal expansion slots. You want to also identify where your wireless and video cards are. If it's removing external hardware, like a jump drive or a flash drive that you plug in, don't just pull it out. Make sure you go to the bottom right and you want to make sure that you acknowledge that you are ejecting it or disconnecting it so it can turn it off before you disconnect it. And PNP is a plug and play component. So that's going to be like you don't have to eject or disconnect external mouse. You just unplug it, or external keyboard. You just unplug those. That's not a process. But if it's a jump drive or an external hard drive, it could still be processing or doing something. You don't want to stop it. You just want to close out of it fully and then tell it, hey, I'm about to disconnect you, and let the computer acknowledge that it accepted that disconnection. Okay. Tear down and rebuilding. Don't have to read these. We just saw it, but things that TK and others have pointed out, ensure that you know where your things are going. Try to make sure that you stay as organized as possible. That helps with putting it back together. Identify things that you can use to upgrade. It'll be very bad if you're trying to upgrade something and you then refer to your documentation and find out that what you purchased could even work on it. You want to make sure that you buy the right things to upgrade. So make sure you hit the forms or go to the manufacturer to ensure that, hey, I want to replace this with this, and I can actually do it. You want to do that before you disconnect anything. And always unplug from the wall and take the battery out with laptops. You want to make sure that there's no residual or power anywhere near this device when you go. We know that's the process with desktops as well. But organization and documenting will save you a lot of headache. You just saw that video. Kelly mentioned some of this already, but never hold a laptop by the lid of screen. I always carry a laptop with both hands. I got a feeling on that. That's the right way to do it, you know. So I'm gonna give you the proper techniques. Never immerse a laptop in liquid and protect them from inclement weather, Miss Diaz. Okay, all right. If the laptop is not a touch screen, do not touch the screen. You have no reason to. I always use the case when transporting to avoid breaking it by accidentally dropping it, of course. Protect from overheating by keeping it on a flat surface. Never put it on a pillow or on the bed because it'll block the vents. So have something flat on it. Diaz mentioned in chat that she has a cooling fan. They are welcome. Like I said, any option to help with additional cooling or ventilation of your laptop is a positive. There's always a net positive there. Always close the laptop carefully from the sit on the lid and never slam it down. You could have something sitting on the laptop and you don't know it. So be careful how you bring it down. And never clean a laptop with anything scratchy. Use a soft cloth, and you can do it without cleaning solutions. In most cases, they have a spray. When I worked, you can find it now probably anywhere, but it's a very mild solution that can be used on actual TVs, but it's also rated to be used on laptops as well. If you're not like eating while you're on your computer, you're not going to have many instances where you'll need to like do a deep clean, but they have things that help you clean it up. So just keep that in mind. All right. As it stands, we talked about laptops and a lot of those components. And with this technical session, we described the functions and how they differ from desktops. We described the components within the display of a laptop. Kelly did a good job with that. And now we are well aware and confident on how to install and configure hardware and components. If we have any questions, please express them now. If we do not, that concludes this technical session.